Let's take a closer look at the war in Ukraine now with the ABC's former chief foreign correspondent Philip Williams, who's joining us from Sydney. G'day, Phil. The developments certainly over the last 24 hours, more calls for that no-fly zone, but the West saying it ain't going to happen.
No, and that's been consistent. And the reason is they don't want to confront Russia head-on in a military way because they fear that could end up in World War III, a nuclear war. So they're simply not going to take that step. There'll be increasing pressure. We'll see more and more of these horrible pictures. There'll be atrocities, no doubt, and the pressure will build. But at the moment, there'll be no military response from the West because they just fear it will get out of control and it'll just be too dangerous, not just for the combatants, not just for those frontline states, but for the entire world.
And over the last 24 hours, I guess what we've seen is that inability to get the citizens out of Mariupol as well because of the ongoing fighting. What's going on there?
Well, it's shocking, isn't it? I mean, these people have been without power, food, water, basic medical facilities for 6 days now. They've been under constant bombardment. It's a hell on earth. And there was a first attempt to get them out, to get the citizens out. That failed because of shelling. And a second one was organised. It was supposed to be an 11-hour window to allow 200,000 people to leave, an enormous exodus. And that didn't even get off the ground either. So both those attempts have failed, both sides blaming each other for continuing the fighting and making it too unsafe to travel. But what it means is that those poor people are still trapped in that city. They're under bombardment 24/7, and more of them will no doubt die because they weren't allowed or weren't able to get out of that blighted city. If they had got out, there'd have been another 200,000 people on the move looking for safety, no doubt pushing westward to the safety of places like Poland or Romania, adding to the 1.5 million people, Ukrainians, that have already taken that trek and left their country.
Yeah, and Phil, just on another note, I was due to speak to a contact on the program who lives in Moscow this morning. Overnight, she messaged and said that she no longer felt safe speaking to us. There have been many more arrests, haven't there, with the protests there. Are you able to get a sense of what's going on on the ground in Russia?
Well, there's new legislation that's basically means that if you broadcast anything that's against the Putin line that has any even mentions this as an invasion, you could face up to 15 years in prison. It's meant that foreign media has shut down virtually in Moscow. It's meant that those that out just a few days ago now don't. It's an atmosphere of fear and repression. And quite frankly, I'm sure she would have feared that if she'd spoken to you, there'd be the knock on the door and she'd be hauled off for questioning and perhaps even worse. So it's a terrifying atmosphere now for those that oppose Putin. But there are still thousands of people willing to go out on the street and demonstrate and be arrested. But of course, that doesn't mean that there are enough of them to actually change anything in Russia. It doesn't mean that Putin's going to shift his opinion at all. All it means is he's going to work harder to suppress those voices.
And here we are into the 12th day of this military action, this invasion by Russia. Hey, Phil, thanks for sort of bringing us up to speed on all of it.
Thanks.